Hello and welcome back to another Blizzcon 2014 video. So today I'm going to be covering the World of Warcraft stuff that we have learnt so far. Now, in terms of World of Warcraft, there's not a great deal going on at BlizzCon. In fact, we only really got one bit of new information, and that's about a battle pet that's going to be sold for charity. I'll cover that in a minute. So yeah, that's the only bit of real news that we got. The World of Warcraft panel about itemization and all that stuff was mainly spent on class changes, itemization changes, things like explaining the healing model of warlords, and stuff like that. So for many of the people who watch this channel, it might not really be of particular interest because you might know a lot of this stuff. But I'm still going to cover it in this video so that all this stuff is just here in one place, and hopefully someone will learn out of it. Now, before I get into all the class stuff, there is a new battle pet. It's the basic, like, little, space goat dude. It's really cute, and 100% of the money will go to the Red Cross. I know that Mike Morheim specifically mentioned Ebola, so maybe that, I don't know if Red Cross have got a specific Ebola donation thing, but whatever, that's where the money's going to, and it will be on sale in December, and all profits made this year will go towards charity. So if you buy it in 2015, the money's going in Blizzard's pocket. If you buy it as soon as it comes out in 2014, then the money will be going to the Red Cross. So I think that's good, that's a nice gesture, and if you are going to release a battle pet, I think this is totally a cool way to do it. So GG Blizz, I'm happy to see that. Now let's talk about classes in Warlords of Draenor. So first of all, they said that the goal with the class changes was mainly just to... Okay, so with that covered, it's time to talk about the classes. Now, I did kind of give up transcribing this thing halfway through because I just realized it was just rehashing all this stuff. So, yeah, the good news is that the lovely folks over at MMO Champion have basically boiled the whole thing down into points. I'll use those as talking points and just make my way through and explain what's going on. So first of all, they said that their overall goal was to keep the classes fun, cut down on PvP crowd control, which I think is a very valid thing, and then also just to make the numbers a bit more manageable via the number squish, and then just overall just make the gameplay a bit more refined, fun, and streamlined, because essentially what they realized is that as time went on, the game got more and more bloated, and really removing abilities and squishing the numbers was a very good way to combat that. They went through an example during the presentation about, I think it was Resto Druids, and how they started off with, I think it was like 41 spells, and that ended up, well, 41 spells, but I think there were more that were, it was 21, which was like the core spec stuff, then some extra were like in multiple forms. But anyway, the total number was 41, and by the time I think one of the expansions, I think it was Cataclysm it was like 57. And they were just saying that this is too much. So what's happened in Warlords of Draenor is they've brought those ability numbers down to about what the vanilla levels were, because they just feel that a lot of the abilities did not really, turn out to be a lot of fun. And then what they did is they described what they consider to be a fun or not fun ability. So I'll just read down the list here. They said that the main things that they're concerned with are the fantasy of the spell, the visuals of the spell, the cool effects, if they're powerful, whether the spell feels interactive, and just whether there's a clear purpose behind the spell. So they said that redundant things are not fun, with examples being Frostfire Bolt and Frostbolt for Fire and Arcane. They also said that abilities with an inconsistent fantasy are not fun, that situational abilities, or at least highly situational ones, are not fun, so things like Nourish. They also said that abilities which have been balanced to mediocrity are not fun, and their example there was Mortal Strike. Mortal Strike is a far more prominent spell in Warlords of Draenor, however it would appear that there are some other mechanical issues with arms in terms of there being maybe a bit of a lack of depth. I'll have to do more testing once the game hits live, but I know that's something people have been worried about. Anyway, they also said that abilities with no feedback are not fun, so things like Bloodstrike, which has got no real animation or visual or anything like that. Now, I do agree with them on Bloodstrike with the lack of a cool visual, but what Bloodstrike did to the pace of the DK meant that there was a bit of filler to do. There was something to keep you in the pace and the flow of playing the class. I'd be worried that it would maybe feel a little bit clunky without something to keep the pace going. So maybe that's a bit of a concern. And their whole point about abilities that don't look cool not being fun, well, I present to you the Hunter class. Blizzard, seriously, make our things look cool. Anyway, let's move on to other things that they talked about. So things that are unreliable are not fun. So they mentioned a lot of the feral druid, usage requirements that they've actually removed in Warlords of Draenor. They also said that complicated things are not fun, so an example of that was Symbiosis. And overall, they said that a lot of returning players have just had trouble working out how their class played because as time has went on, there have just been so many changes and things like that. And ideally, they said that you shouldn't have to go to another website to work out how your class plays. Now, I think that there's definitely a lot of truth here. Every class, though, when you get down to it, probably boils down to maybe 6 abilities, like your core rotation abilities. Then everything else is utility or cooldowns or something like that. And I think it's more just the bloat of the utility and cooldown related things that's maybe made it just less easy to get into the game. Certainly in Warlords, I think that the number of abilities is generally quite nice. In fact, I think it was an Elemental Shaman, I was still like filling 24 slots, so I don't know if every class is where it should be. But certainly, I'm glad they're removing abilities. I'm just a bit concerned about some of the class changes and things like that, but we'll have to see how the expansion and its patches plays out. So, yeah, that's what they've said about that. They also said that one reason why they scrapped the old talent system was to kind of combat this problem of there being a bloat of abilities, a bloat of talents, and a bloat of things, but it didn't solve it. Essentially, with the old talent system, they just felt like it was adding, too much weight and stuff. But what actually happened when they added the mop thing is that the mop talents added more clickable abilities. They added more buttons. So really, it ended up not really accomplishing that goal. However, they still do like the idea of the mop talent tree and how it's so swappable and how they can really make sure that every choice is decently powerful. Look, so far, I like the mop talents. I don't have a problem with them. At the end of the day, I played during Wrath and Cataclysm and a bit of, not hardcore during TBC, but I like those talents back then and I like the ones now. I feel like I definitely make more gameplay-oriented decisions with my talents now than I did back then, so I don't have too much of a problem with it. Anyway, that's mainly what they talked about with class changes. Essentially, every class is being boiled down to its ideals, and the spells that they've decided that are not fun are being removed. Then, of course, number squish and all that stuff's happening to make things a bit more palatable. Overall, I think the class changes are for the good, but there are definitely some cases where maybe things are a bit rough and could certainly do with more work. Now, the next thing that they talked about was healing. And of course, healing has been quite the topic in MoP. It started off really in a situation where mana was something you had to watch out for in dungeon gear, but then as you geared up, mana was not a problem, and it got to the stage in patch 5.4 where it was just like mana was not a thing you had to worry about, and healing was this bizarre, reactive is good, but too reactive. It nearly felt like the Twitch shooter of MMO healing. Now, Blizzard actually described this in their own words as health bar whiplash, based on the idea that if you looked at someone's health bar, you could see it was down to here, but the predictive healing thing would say that, it's going to be healed up full. And they didn't like the idea of people just going from, near dead to full, near dead to full. And it didn't really allow for enough space within healing gameplay to make conscious decisions and things like that. It was more just like, everything's burning, click the buttons. So apparently that's what it was. I didn't play much of a healer in MoP, so I can't really speak from experience, but certainly based on what a lot of healers that I know have said, that would appear to be the case. They also said that smart heals were too smart, and it got to the stage where the game was playing itself for you. I mean, I certainly do agree with that. From just thinking about game design perspective, it doesn't make a lot of sense to just have an ability which will say, grab the 6 most damaged people and heal them up all the time, especially in a situation where mana doesn't matter. I mean, I'm okay with that ability existing as long as it's super scary and expensive, but if mana doesn't matter because of gear scaling, then you just sit there hitting that button, which I think kind of sucks. Yeah, a bit of a problem. They also said that one of the problems in MoP was mana scaling, and basically what they've done in Warlords is double player's health. This means that a boss will take twice as long to kill you, but it will take twice as long to heal a player up. And basically that should allow for more time for thinking in healing gameplay. They've also made smart heals a little bit less smart, so they just heal anyone who is injured rather than whoever is the most injured. They've also made it so that healers will have enough mana at lower item levels. This will mean that, say, the big, scary, early Cataclysm dungeon problems for healers should not be there. Certainly in the beta, I've not seen as much as there was in the Cataclysm beta, so that's probably a good thing, and I think it will pan out it'll be good. I think it'll be better than Cataclysm, and hopefully better than Miss Pandaria as well. just from a gameplay perspective. Now also they said that healers, or for healers, spirit is on less slots. Now this means that you won't be able to gear yourself in such a way that mana is trivialized. It will always be a thing that you do have to be concerned with, which I think is good, and overall this should make healing a bit slower and a bit more tactical and a bit more decision making focused in Warlords of Draenor. I think this is a good thing, and I mean I've got a priest which I've got to level up, and I've been thinking of making that priest a healer. So we'll have to see how it goes. Next, we're going to move on to itemization. Now, itemization is certainly a touchy topic in Warlords of Draenor. I've heard a lot of people, especially in the raiding scene, just be a little bit concerned about how items have, been handled. And certainly a lot of those concerns are things that I share. So I'll just go down the list of things that Blizzard said. First of all, they said that in MoP, the whole thing about a gear token was kind of crappy. You would basically get your gear token, you'd go to an NPC, you would then work out all the maths for the best reforge and all that stuff, then you'd get your gems and things, and you'd upgrade it and do all that stuff, and then finally you could use it. They said they didn't really like that, and they've got this new tagline called Kill, Loot, Equip, where you kill a boss, you drop the token, you right-click on the token, it pops up, now it's yours, and you can put it on immediately. In Warlords of Draenor, things like enchantments are only for rings and stuff like that, and stuff like, say, gem sockets are like special things that you get on gear, so basically, if you kill a boss and the gear's of a higher item level than what you currently have, you can just whack it on and you'll be good to go. I think this is a really fun way of doing things, and yeah, certainly I'm quite happy about that. And again, just removing that step with tier tokens of having to go and redeem the token is really cool. So that's, again, some really good stuff. They also said that hidden expertise are being removed, which means that you don't need to reforge and regem all the time as you kind of used to. Of course, reforging is gone, so that's less of a thing. And as for gems, well, all your gem slots in socketed gear will be prismatic, so you should have just a lot of freedom there, which should be pretty good. Also, they said that item upgrades are gone. Again, this is removing another one of those things that you had to do to your gear in order to get it to be usable. Which, again, another nice thing. Also, caps and breakpoints are gone, which makes item like gearing and stuff a lot easier. Basically, the way it used to be in MoP is that there were certain things like, say, haste breakpoints, where you would want to target a certain amount of haste. Well, with the way that they're doing all their maths in Warlords of Draenor, everything's just going to scale up in a nice fashion. There will be no breakpoints, so you will not have to worry, apparently. Look, that's the kind of gameplay that, yes, it did exist, but I personally had no time for it. I couldn't be bothered. I like the idea of kill, loot, equip. When I raid because I enjoy the mechanics of my class and the boss. I don't really enjoy the other crap surrounding that as much, and I just think it's more fun to promote the idea of you going into a raid to get cool loot from a boss with your friends, instead of, whatever the past thing was. So, yeah, I'm happy with things like breakpoints and stuff being removed. Again, it's just more freedom, it's not like you're being curbed in terms of your freedom by all of these breakpoints and things you must adhere to. So from a game design perspective, it's good stuff. Also, they said that in Mists, a lot of the time, loot could drop and then no one could use it, which didn't really feel too good. Now in Warlords of Draenor, things like set bonuses and stats will switch on armor slots to help with this problem. And I'm going to go to the thing that my guild always experienced, which was the Holy Paladin. We had one Holy Paladin who was not really a main raider, like sometimes he joined, sometimes he wouldn't. But it was always annoying when he wasn't there and a bit of Holy Paladin gear dropped, because our Ret Paladin would just be sitting there being a bit sad. Well, now in Warlords of Draenor, that Holy Paladin gear will just swap its stats over to be good for Ret. So if you have a bit of plate, it will work for any plate wearer. I think this is a really cool system. And then, of course, also for set bonuses, they're going to swap based on your spec. This is great. This is really nice. So imagine I'm a Ret Paladin who also wants to do prop. Well, now I just have my one tier set which will do both jobs. I think that's great, and it lowers the barrier of entry to things like tanking and healing and, switching into other roles, which, again, is certainly a brilliant thing, so I'm definitely happy to see that. Now, they also said that in terms of tanking stats, dodge and parry are gone, and they've basically been rolled into bonus armor. Now, you can still dodge and parry, it's just they're no longer stats, and bonus armor is just your catch-all tanking statistic that's always going to be good for you. Then finally, they said that there are more sources of loot in Warlords of Draenor, especially during things like questing and leveling. That's definitely true, and if you look at my gear level overview for WoD, then I think you'll see that is the case. Then finally, they said that versatility, multi-strike, tertiary stats, Sockets and randomly upgraded quest gear are all things that they use to improve item variety. Also, the Warforged system is implemented, and you can proc additional gem sockets. So there's a lot more randomness going on. And this is something that they will address, though, during the Q&A, because there are some concerns with it. Okay then, time to talk about the Q&A. First of all, though, something important to say. If you are at the Q&A, and you're sitting there waiting to ask your question, please make sure it's not a bad question, because we have limited time. And as always, BlizzCon Q&As prove to be one of the most frustrating viewing experiences, because people ask little small niche questions about their little tiny personal problem that really, we want to know the big picture, we want to know the cool, interesting stuff. It just, it really gets frustrating, and it's quite funny how social media sort of blows up during these Q&As, just with, the viewers thinking, oh, you're really asking that? We don't care. So, yeah, there's my little rant over. Oh, also, little addition to the rant. The whole, hey, I'm X from server Y, shout out to Z. I get that that's cool, but if people didn't do that, we could probably get, maybe 4, 5, 6 extra questions in, which would be lovely. Yeah, okay, let's talk about the content of the Q&A. So first of all, someone asked about Gladiator's Resolve, and why it was not a 4th spec, like, say, a Guardian Druid. Basically, Blizzard said that there were really very few mechanical changes needed to the core prot ability, so they felt like they could get away with it as a talent, which is pretty cool. And Blizzard also said that the Legendary is a ring, which we've all known, but that while they don't currently have any regular Legendaries in Warlords, it's not something that they are against, and that they could see both of those kind of working in harmony. They see the ring/cloak as your kind of badge of participation for, doing all of Pandaria or all of Warlords, which I suppose is fine, but still, I mean, don't make me rant about, say, medals for participation in schools and how that is just terrible. I don't like the idea of participation rewards being a legendary with such a high item level, so I think that's a bit of a pity, but whatever, it is how it is, and it's the system that Blizzard wants to continue with. Also, they said that Disciplined Priests were just far too powerful for a lot of Mists of Pandaria, and one of the reasons why they didn't nerf them when they sort of identified that is because they didn't want to make it so that a guild would be able to kill a boss one week, then post-nerf wouldn't be able to. Basically, they messed up their balance, but they didn't want to make that mess up punish people mid-tier, which I suppose makes sense. Now also, there was a lot of talk about seeing the bonus on a tier token. So, for an example, right, when you use a tier token, you use it, you right-click, little bar goes, and then boom, you get your bit of gear. Now, that gear could be Warforged, could have tertiary stats or something like that. Now, there are a lot of raid leaders who would say, well, right, would it not be nice if we could see whether this is Warforged on the token itself? Because when they give out that token to a player, they want to give it out to, if there's a big Warforged token, they probably want to give it to their best DPS, because that will help the raid out the most. Well, basically, Blizzard said that it's something they're looking into and talking about, but that overall, they do prefer kind of prioritizing the fun of the individual over the kind of theorycraft side of things, and, giving X best item to whatever person and all that stuff. I'd imagine there's going to be some EPGP fun in general with this expansion, with tertiary stats, Warforged, and all that stuff, but we'll just have to see how it pans out. Now also, they said that there is still significant complexity, challenge, and depth in the gameplay even after the Warlords of Draenor changes, and that specs are as accessible as possible, but not really without removing depth. Another thing that they talked about a lot is how they are trying to shift mechanical depth over towards the bosses, a little bit more than in the past. Essentially, as times went on, your classes have got more complex, and simultaneously, boss encounters have got more complex. It seems like they've just felt that got a little bit too much during MOP, so they're going to remove a little bit of the bloat from the classes and then add a little bit more to the bosses so that you just got cooler bosses. I think that's good because giant stompy boss encounters are really, really fun, so I think it should work out pretty well, and a lot of that lost complexity won't really affect you. It won't affect you in your day-to-day leveling or doing daily quests, so it sounds like the sort of thing where we're going to have fun bosses and it shouldn't affect our day-to-day gameplay too much. And certainly from the beta, I don't feel like my gameplay's been too ruined, though certainly, again, I can imagine maybe some warriors and definitely a few classes will feel a little bit iffy about the class changes, and I totally get why. Next, they said that tanks are generally sometimes better at soloing, For an example, the DK who like soloed Lei Shen, which is insane, but that they don't really want to sort of balance that content specifically so that everyone can level it. Or not level it, solo it. It's more just done so that it's like, as everyone gets more powerful, some people will be able to solo stuff. So yeah, I think the question is because someone was like a mage and they were thinking, well, hey, I'm a mage, but here's this DK soloing bosses. I can't do that. And really, it's just about the quirks of specific classes and roles being better suited to some kinds of content. So whatever, that's the thing. Next, they also talked about Druid flight forms and the separate buttons. This is something that people have actually been a little bit salty about. I've seen in one or two situations. They've said that they will be adding glyphs to fix this problem. Also, for Shadow Priests, they said that they are thinking of doing some visual upgrades in the future. Might add hunters onto the list, but yeah, that's cool. More shiny Shadow Priests is certainly a good thing. Also, on the topic of mana gems, they said they just didn't add much interest in gameplay, and that they are gone for that reason. Certainly when I played Arcane, mana gems generally came down to wait until you are at a certain level of mana, use your gem, then just use it on cooldown, and I don't think that was particularly fun, so fair enough. Also, they said that raid cooldowns and things like that are not as important anymore, so there should be a bit more diversity in terms of the classes that are brought to raids. I think that's definitely good. There was a lot of instances where it was just like, bring loads of this class or whatever because, hey, we need skull banners. With a lot of that stuff being removed or toned down, it shouldn't be as much of an issue. So again, I think that's a pretty okay thing to do. And then they also talked a little bit about rogues, actually, and how their gameplay works, the few abilities that sort of lock you in. So things like Death from Above and the really super stabby one. This is the stabby motion, but just in case you weren't aware. And they said that those abilities in terms of their tuning and stuff are all bounced around the idea of maybe you won't be able to use them, and that's an intended decision to make in gameplay. So basically, if you manage to Death from Above yourself off a cliff, it's your own damn fault, and yeah, Blizzard says it's your fault, so there you go. Now, also, in terms of professions, they said that they did one or two things. One of the issues that they had in past expansions is there were so many items you would craft to level up, but you'd never need them. Say, all the quest grains. Well, that stuff's gone in Warlords, and the gear that you will be able to craft will actually be more useful. Now, in terms of Draenic Dust, which is just your, dust reagent from disenchanting things, that's also been balanced in terms of costs to reflect this change, so it shouldn't be too punishing. And then they've also said that just on the topic of adding more filtering and things like that to the Dungeon Finder, well, they are not going to do it because it will increase queue times. This was in specific response to someone who was talking about, I think, achievements or something, and saying, hey, I want to do an achievement, can I not, sign up for an LFD achievement run? Of course, that's fine in theory, but queue times are a thing, so it's best not to have it, and hopefully the in-game group finder will facilitate that need. Also, in terms of other things, I think, the final thing they said was that the combo point UI could be better placed, but they haven't found a solution for it. Look, the answer is pretty simple. Put the combo points on the rogue's character portrait. It would make sense. Do that, Blizz. I don't like how it appears in the enemy. It doesn't make any sense now the combo points follow you wherever you go. So there you go. That is it for this recap of what was said. It was a decently long panel, so I think maybe hopefully you got something out of this video just by having it a bit more broken down and just getting the raw facts and less of the banter. So yeah, there you go, some class changes and things. Thanks for watching, let me know what you think about the Warlords changes, and I'll see you next time.